Hi guys, Mr. Jaeger here, and welcome back to the Invictus launch week, day 2, technically 3. And today it is Crusader, Misk, Mirai, and Tumbril Cyclone Day. No, Tumbril, not just the Cyclone, but Tumbril Day as well. Yes, it's surprisingly Tumbril haven't actually made more than just the Cyclone, but shocking. No, but today is the last day of all the random scatter-about stuff, because obviously all of these particular ship manufacturers, while they have their fair share of military aircraft, they're not really known for their military aircraft. On IAE Day, oh dear God, but we're not quite there yet, so our wallets are safe for now. I've already invested in this game a little bit extra now. Thank you very much, Mirai. Anyway, regardless of that, we are here today on the second event day, and we are going to be seeing the wonders of Crusader alongside a whole host of other ships, which obviously, thankfully, are not huge amounts, because again, it's not exactly what they're known for, but at the same time, they are slowly but surely getting a bit of a military build-up. Speaking of which, let's now talk a bit about the Crusader. Probably a little bit of a foreword just to forewarn you guys. Unfortunately, due to the nature of Star Citizen and the recording software and my computer not being the NASA levels, there may be points where the game will lag, may have stutterings, exactly as I fucking say the word lag, and as such there may be some glitches and issues. I can only apologize for this. Unfortunately, it's not. There may be points where it freezes, and there's not a lot I can do about it. But I just hope you can bear with it. But thank you very much in advance. Anyway, Crusader Industries, this game's universal good guys, or attempting to be good guys, in form of a ship manufacturer. Now, previously, Crusader Industries were all about humanitarian and rescue and aid and transport. And recently, however, they've kind of strayed a little bit into the dark side by going into dedicated military aircraft. Originally, you would know them more for their ships like the Crusader Industries Hercules, or the MSR, or the... My brain's farting. What else is there? I'm just going to go with the MSR, the Crusader, the Spirit. There we go. And the Spirit vessels. However, recently, in Star Citizen history, we've now finally started to see some dedicated combat platforms show up. One of these is the Ares series, Ares Starfighter, of which this variant is the Inferno. The Inferno and its its sister ship, the Ion, are capital ship killers, or at least in terms of what their intentions are. So, what makes these particular ships so special? Well, apart from the fact that they look absolutely freaking gorgeous, their main strength is the fact that each of these ship variants has a size 7 weapon. The Ares Inferno, being the ballistic kind, is featuring the Bearing F7FB ballistic Gatling gun, which is a chunky boy. And upon the announcement of this particular vessel, everyone said this is the A10 Warthog of Star Citizen, and it's really hard to dispute this, especially when you're firing it and you hear the Burt. It's not quite the same Burt, but it is Burt enough for me, and I like that. I like that about this ship. And of course, it's not just the gun, we've also got some missiles as well, which in this particular ship's case, it has 20 size 3 missiles, 12 Arrestor 3s, and 8 Viper 3s. Basically, different types of recognition software inside the targeting elements towards that. So this thing is a menace to be reckoned with. I'm just going to have a quick look inside the cockpit canopy, because I tried getting into the Ion earlier and it wouldn't let me get in, which is really sad. So let's hop into this one instead. I've actually owned one of these things both with IRL cash and also in-game, because you can actually now purchase these vessels in-game. They are expensive as fuck, but they are in-game. And don't forget though, guys, the new Master Mode system is in tow, which means it's not quite as easy as it once was to fly these things, but when you hit something, my god, it hurts. As well as other things in 323 which have recently changed, the Ares Inferno did kind of get a bit of a nerf, in a small sense. It had its total ammunition consumption changed, and also it has a slightly slower rate of fire. Not by huge amounts, but it's a little bit enough. It's a little bit of enough. So, yes, unfortunately, the Ares series, well, the Inferno has unfortunately lost a bit of its bite, but it certainly has a nasty amount of bark still to go around. But still, I love this ship. And to be fair, if you're encountering most vessels inside the verse, especially if you're doing PvE, this thing is a nightmare to anything the size of anything bigger than a Cutlass Black. A Cutlass Black is killable, very much so, but again, in terms of combat, it's a lot harder to hit anything that's smaller than the Cutlass Black. It's just painful. This ship is designed to knock out and eliminate parts of a capital ship, such as an Idris, the Polaris, or anything like a Caterpillar, or anything of that substantial size. So what exactly does the Ion do? Well, the Ion is more or less the exact same ship, only with the exception that the Ares Ion has a size 7 bearing SF-7E laser cannon, which recently had a feature change in 323, whereupon instead of just firing as multiple pulses, it now has the ability to charge up its shot, which this particular vessel is designed to try and knock out the shields on a vessel of a substantial size, this making it extremely viable for those who just want to watch the world burn on an enemy vessel, whilst the Inferno is designed to remove said vessel. Same missile complement, 12 Arrestor 3s, 12 12 Viper 3s. So again, there's 12. Did I say 12 and 12 again? No, 12 Arrestor 3s, 8 Ignite. Fucking hell. God fucking damn it. 8 Viper 3s. If English was something I could utilize, I think we would be a lot better off. But yes, as you can see, this vessel is really nice, actually. I do like the aesthetics. Can I get in the ship? Oh, I can get into the ship. Brilliant. It works now. I was trying to record earlier. It didn't like it. And I'm like, no. And the game is also doing its lag thing, which really doesn't help. Thank you very much, game. Really appreciate you not working. It's just the servers, unfortunately. Everyone's hopping on. It's you know, at the time of this recording, it's a Sunday evening. Everyone is hopping onto the servers because they have nothing better to do. And no, it's because everyone wants to hop on Star Citizen. Copium flowing. But yeah, so I've not personally flown an Ares Ion into combat. Maybe that's something I should probably do this particular wipe. That might be a stratagem. That might be a stratagem indeed. That could be a thing. In terms of view, you don't really get an upwards view with the Ares series. I kind of wish you could... If I was to make any suggestions for changes, I would reduce the size of this panel by like half, so you could actually see a little bit up and behind you, because then it would give you the full sense of like tactical awareness. But the thing is, this particular vessel is not really designed for dogfighting, so it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't be able to see everything around you, but having extra visuals wouldn't be a bad thing either. But still, it is a very, very good combat ship series, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who wants to slap someone with a little bit more spice to them. So, now that we've talked a bit about the Ares, let's talk about the big boys in the room, the Crusader Hercules. Now, technically speaking, the Crusader Hercules isn't really a dedicated combat ship. It's more of a dedicated transport ship. The C2, which is the large white one in the middle, has a cargo carrying capacity of 696 SCU, currently the largest in Star Citizen for internal cargo carrying capacities. The other benefit of this particular ship is that, as you can see in the distance there, the cargo door opens at the port, the bow and starboard sections, port and stern sections of the ship, giving you the ability to put in large amounts of cargo or transport vehicles without too much difficulty. This makes this the ship to run as cargo haulers. Now, I know that the Hull C is a current thing at the moment, but considering the fact that the Hull C, when fully deployed, is extremely difficult to maneuver and negotiate, and considering the risks that you had involved in moving those things, it's not really that surprising that there's a fair amount of players who probably would prefer this over such ships as the Hercules. Yes, people prefer the Hercules over the Hercules. Oh, no, the Hercules over the Hull C. And it's also, because it flies like a plane, it also is a lot easier to work with as well. It's a very sexy, large vessel, and certainly deserves the respect of that. We won't be walking on to the Hercules C2, because it's A, we did it previous years, and B, that will be something we can look forward to in IAE. The only thing I will mention in terms of an internal element, which I'm wondering if you have the same thing on the A2, but I will digress. The one thing I will mention, of course, is that there are military variants of the ship, which I'm going to go onto the A2 for this one. So the M2 is a slightly smaller cargo carrying capacity, which, if I'm going to tab onto the element, yeah, so basically, it allows, the M2 variant is a military transport which supports landing operations as well as infantry transport. This one only has a cargo carrying capacity of 522 SCUs worth, but the main difference is that it has a frontal mounted turret, internal armory and hangars, armory and minor troop transport. It's like, you got enough for about 10 guys in there, plus the crew. So that particular variant is useful because, again, you can utilize it for ground transport. Though, to be fair, if you're going to talk about military operations and landing, C2. Not M2, C2. I know the internal components are different for the M2 versus the C2, and probably there's going to be a bit more armor for the M2 and the C2, so that in the future the M2 may have more armor, therefore by maybe more valuable for a naval landing invasion, blah 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 blah. But still, if I was going to take a ship that needed cargo down to the front, you could take a C2. So why am I on this one? What is so special about the A2? Well, apart from the fact that it looks absolutely gorgeous, is also the fact that it has a pretty substantial package towards the rear. I am, of course, talking about the size 10 bombs. Yeah, you heard me right. The 10... If I can get the bloody thing set up. Yeah, there's 10 size 10 bombs. Yeah, he's wonderful. He's lovely. Is it 10 or is it 4? 2 size 3 missile racks. Oh, sorry, no, 4. I thought it was 10 size 10s. No, because that would make it ridiculous. No, it is 4 size 10 bombs. My apologies. I think they changed it recently, but hey-oh. So yes, the 4 size 10 bombs that you have available to you. As you can see here, it's kind of mental. Now, bearing in mind, weapon sizes at this moment in time in Star Citizen is currently limited to size 10. Which means everything up to, and most ships in Star Citizen are like up to 5, maybe 4. This is at least 5 to 6 levels higher than the 2. I thought we had 10 size. No, that's the Spirit that I'm thinking about. Right. That's why I'm losing my brain, because it's 10 size 5 bombs. That's why. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. So, the 4... Still, 4 bombs of size 10 and above is still a pretty significant bomb load. And as you can see, it is mental with how big they are and how much power they have and how much I love them. When I first got the Crusader Industries into Crusader Industries, this was my first ever ship that I owned from Crusader Industries, and it's well worth the price, especially since if you go to a Jumptown event, every fucker who sees you flying overhead, sees your designation, may shit their pants ever so slightly. Because who wouldn't when they see a size 10 bomb coming right down onto them? If any of you have watched any War Thunder videos from Malzi or anything else, it's basically the equivalent of a PE-8 dropping that, or a Lancaster dropping the Earthquake bomb. It's that powerful. Not quite nuke level, but powerful enough that it makes what easily could be a fuel air bomb, or it's a Moab. You know how those work. So, as we approach into the first of the 2 rooms, we are presented with a very pleasant sighting, and also a little bit of, like, Crusader history merging into the Crusader present. We are, of course, looking at, first of all, a fuck ton of people just standing there, GG. But no, first of all, we're looking at, in the center, the Crusader Mercury Star Runner, the first vessel from Crusader Industries to grace Star Citizen and its wonderful presence. I'll get to you lovelies later. Oh, yeah, it's right here. It's just the announcer. I was a bit like, oh, shit, this is a nice announcer. But no, the Crusader Mercury Star Runner was, in my opinion, one of the big changes in Star Citizen when it came to ship design. Because prior to the release of the Mercury Star Runner, ship interaction, ship internals, and everything else kind of had a very baseline designed flow to it. It didn't really have any sort of fanciness to it, no internal lighting systems. It just, you entered the ship, you got to the cockpit, and you did what you needed to do. Nothing about it was too fancy, it just worked. Then the Mercury Star Runner comes along and introduces concepts such as interior lighting, the ability to lock your doors, the ability to manage your internal lights so that one room may be lit up and be bright as all hell, or other rooms may be down on lighting to perhaps save your power, however much the placebo would be. So, for example, the ability to interact here and the ability to turn off the lights over here. It was also famous for being the little ship that you could hide into, which is, to be fair, one of the worst kept secrets in the Star Citizen's gameplay, because now everyone knows about the MSR's capability to hide stuff. Though apparently there is in fact a hidden secret compartment that allows you to smuggle shit in anywhere you want to go. Or at least that's the supposed theory about these particular vessels. I have not personally looked into it, but then again, I'm not that fussed about the Crusader Industries Mercury Star Runner. The main purpose of the MSR is it's cargo hauling. It's the Millennium Falcon of Star Citizen that a lot of players sort of cope onto. There you go. So there's an option for you to see into here, and then there's apparently an extra little hidey hole or whatever. So there is an area that you can go to that you can get additional hidden storage space and everything else. And of course, if you're the kind of person who is currently on the run and doesn't want to be found, you can also hide in here, or if you want to hop onto a ship and if they've been living under a rock and they don't realize that there is a hidden compartment underneath their ship, you could potentially hide on this ship as well, which, again, is impressive if that's the case, but, you know, it's fine, it's fine. But no, the main sort of benefit of this entire system, the main benefit of the purpose of this ship is it's a data handling vessel, which if we hop into the server room, you will see. It is a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of hard-coded facts, which, to be fair, this also looks like it's almost there. And considering the fact that we've got data handling, hacking, and other jazz coming in the near future, we're starting to see some real big gameplay loops, which will involve the usage of vessels such as the Crusader MSR, the Terrapin, and the Herald as well. All of which we'll be talking about in the following days. But this particular sheet allows you to access the internet and also do some the internet. But this sheet allows you to access the radar dish located on the top of the vessel, giving you that seamless amount of information and polls, whereupon then you will then download information to your drive, which then allows you to enjoy the process of gathering and securing data. So it's quite a useful ship in that regard, giving you the ability to relay critical and sensitive information across the stars, whilst also trying to manage the risks. There we go. There we go. Whilst also trying to manage the risks of everything, because obviously it's kind of scary when you realize just how much people might be willing to defend said risks and danger. Now, moving on to ships that I do personally have quite a lot of feelings for, we are, of course, going to talk about the Crusader C1 Spirit. This is the smaller variant of the C series, and is one of the better ships to go for if you're relatively new to Star Citizen. Now, one of the reasons why I personally love this particular vessel is, apart from the fact that it looks absolutely gorgeous, is it also allows the player to not be so dependent on another player to provide additional levels of support. Because I'm not going to lie, there's a bit of a personal, maybe a slight personal bias on this thing. I want this to be better than the Drake Interplanetary Cutlass Black, because the motherfucking Cutlass Black is so goddamn useful. It answers so many questions. We'll be talking about it more in the future on Drake Day, but regardless, I want this ship to work better than a Cutlass Black, because then at least more people can buy into this thing, and we can have a lot more fans of the Spirit series. But no, the main benefits of this ship is that it's not dependent on a multi-crew, which is useful. Despite its initial size, it actually has a lot of cargo capacity, carrying up to 64 SCUs, which is 12 more than the... So 10, 48, so 10 would be 58... 16 more SCUs than... See, even more awesome. 16 SCUs more than the Cutlass Black. You could fit 232 SCUs worth of container cargo here, and it would work lovely. It's also quite a simple, streamlined element. It's Crusader Industries. It's the refinement. It's the thing that have taken from the MSR, and all of the concepts that were working previously have now been implemented into such things, such as much more customization of the buttons, of the door controls, of the locking procedures, internal carrying stuff for the suits. Because although it is more of a solo level ship, which allows you to enjoy things, as you can see by this person here, it does have a few things that if you do have a multi-crew, it does help. The main pilot seat has access to the weapons, the flight, and everything else. The co-pilot seat has access to the tractor beam, which is listed on the back. Now, this particular variant also has some living-in accommodations and capacities to survive. Components are accessed internally as well. Really useful features there. Again, we've got additional cargo capacity. I've been flying around with this particular variant of ship for quite a while, and I personally do quite like it. It's a very useful daily flyer ship. It's quite maneuverable. It's slightly wider in terms of flight than the Cutlass Black, which may make it a bit awkward in certain landing conditions. But once you get used to that, it is a very, very effective vessel, which gives you the ability to do some pretty substantial amount of work within the realms of only one ship. Speaking about doing substantial amounts of work, or in this particular variant's case, removing said substantial amounts of work, we of course go to the military variant of the ship. This one being the A1 Spirit, the baby brother to the to the A2. Now, what exactly is in this ship that makes it so special? Well, as you can see from the back, this is the 10 that I was talking about previously. This is the 10 size 5 bombs. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. 10 size 5 bombs, which I love. I do like my bombers. I actually owned this for a limited time, then I melted everything, and then I regret my choice, so I'm going to probably be getting this again in the near future. But this thing is incredible. It's got 10 size 5 bombs, and it means it's a very practical ship, because again, the size of the ship is the same as the C1, which means you can do a bunch of missions. For example, bunker missions, where there's fucking turrets, and I can then just say, hey, turrets, fuck you! And the entire turrets would go away and never be a problem anymore for anyone. Oh, I miss those. I'm going to love doing that again with this thing. Now that bunker missions are vastly more viable. Oh, hello. Is that the fuses from the thing before? No, I'm just losing my mind. Okay, that's fine. But still, the viability of this vessel, especially as a solo flyer, is extremely... this kind of ship that you can survive in for a time, it is extremely viable. Also, it does have a small cargo bay. It's very much smaller in comparison. In fact, it doesn't have really a cargo bay. Even though it says... Yeah, it's got a small amount of internal storage. I think somewhere it says here. Yeah, there's batteries, there's internal storage, there's other stuff, so it's there. You've also got this little doohickey, which is going to be all about the engineering side of elements. There is a storage component somewhere, but I'll be honest with you, you're not going to really get much opportunity to use it. In terms of cargo grid, I probably would maybe plonk a box or something like a locker box on the side, or hell, I'd probably bring one up into this area here, which we could access, or just have a bunch of equipment and weapons on the side. Considering the fact that 323 is going to be the last... Well, this particular patch, once they fully implement it in, 323 is going to be featuring a completely new inventory system, which will make us completely dependent on whatever shit that we brought into us. So no fancy pants inventory boxes here. This menu will be a thing of the past in the near future, and it's going to be very interesting to see how many people will bitch and moan about it, because you know there's going to be people bitching and moaning about it. It's not even a question. People are going to be like, I can't access my inventory screen. It's getting bad now. But yeah, that's pretty much how most Star Citizen players do whenever something new comes into the game. I mean, I'm one of them, so don't worry. I'm not going to act as if I'm superior or anything. So, as you can see from the images here, we have gotten into the second room, where there is actually quite a sight for us to behold. This is the Misk/Mirai section. Now, Misk is not, again, normal. Is another one of those ship designers that is not really known for its military aircraft, but does have some unique properties with their own military aircraft. One of which, of course, being the Starfarer Gemini, which is the military version of the Starfarer, and it does have its relatively famous Misk Freelancer miss, which is basically a fuck ton of missiles in terms of that. So sacrificing some cargo capacity, but instead having some pretty effective means of shooty shoot. We also, of course, have the Reliant series of ships, because, of course, the MISC being famous for, or Musashi Starflight Industrial and I had it right the first fucking time. Musashi Industrial Star and Starflight Concern. They are one of the few human companies that have been able to share a contract / are working with the Xi'an Empire that have graciously given them technology or means of technology to improve their ship design and flow, which is scary. And then, of course, we've got Mirai, which is a subsidy of MISC, who are more famous for their racing craft vessels, but their first entry into the mix was nightmare in the form of an escape pod. I don't really know what kind of nickname this particular ship has gotten, but I want to just call it the the East Asian Hornet in Star Citizen. Because this fucker just doesn't... This thing just exudes angry energies. And oh... yeah, it's terrifying. So what exactly is this ship? Well, the Fury is a snub fighter, which has 4 size 2 ballistic of Gatling repeaters, which is terrifying in its own element, but it also has some missiles as well. 4 size 2 Ignite missiles. Now, you can see from the dimensions and the size of this ship, if the game would like to work, there we go, it's not very big, which means you could take this on many cargo vessels. In fact, there's a famous image there's images of this thing being loaded into Freelancers, Freelancer Maxes, you could put it into Caterpillars, and naturally, of course, you can put it on any cargo vessel as well, which means any particular person who wants to attack a location or a vehicle or whatever has to deal with this. Oh, and let's not forget, this thing has been given Xi'an levels of technology, which means it can fly in atmo fairly well. Now, the one balancing element towards this particular ship is that it doesn't have a quantum drive, because if it did, I would be terrified. And I'm fairly certain any other person would be terrified as well. Of course, this is not just the only variant of Death Incarnate in a ship. There is also this thing as well, the Fury MX, which decides to remove all of its guns, making it completely vulnerable if it runs out of ammunition, but instead decides, you know what I like about things? Missile. And so instead it has 8 size 1 Marksman 1 missiles with 12 size 2 Ignite missiles. 12 fucking missiles on this thing. Size 1 snub fighter. Fucking seriously. Fucking seriously. Yeah, this thing is Death Incarnate, and I honestly am terrified. Now, of course, there is the racing variant, which is, of course... it's not like... It's not like the worst snub fighter in the universe, but at the same time, it is still, like, kind of terrifying when you realize what kind of devastating power these things in a fleet would be. Like, imagine yourself as a pirate, and this is the thing I often talk about. Imagine yourself as a pirate coming over towards a ship like a caterpillar, thinking, "Oh, arg, we're gonna be having ourselves a fun time today. Little bastards won't get what coming to them." And then these things fly out in a swarm and get towards you. I can just imagine the pirate just sort of going, as their life collapses before their minds. So, yes, the Mirai is terrifying, and they have some very, very good ships in terms of speed, but we'll be getting into those in a second. We'll look into those little things there. But what else is... The other thing that... The other ship series that, of course, is known... Sorry, that MISC has, but I feel is a little bit undervalued, is the Reliant series of ships. In fact, one of these particular ships is, in fact, a starter ship. This is, of course, the Reliant Tanner series. This one's the more militaristic edition of the vessels. But as you can see, it's got some pretty decent weapon armaments on it, which I think is a really cool thing. As you can see here, it's got quite a lot of missile weapon armaments, as well as... I believe that's a size 2, but maybe... Actually, no, to be fair, it feels more like a size 3. So that's like a size 2, so that's definitely like a size 3. But yeah, the firepower element towards this ship is pretty cool, but also it's the more uniquely designed vessel in Star Citizen. It has its own little interior cargo bay, and depending on what version of the Reliant that you have, because this is an old-style design where this is like old-style design of Star Citizen, where a lot of the ships were... there was a fair amount of ships with multi-variant elements towards them. So in this particular thing, it's had a bit of a gold standard improve and whatnot. But as you can see, it's looking pretty nice internally. But one of the things that makes this unique, and it's only really available to see when it's flying, is that this thing has a B-wing-like capability towards it, where you can basically, you fly, you take off and do whatever, and you can orientate the ship to your own particular preference. You can actually have it looking and having it on a horizontal element, but you can also rotate the ship to 90 degrees and have it fly around like a B-wing, which is pretty damn cool. In terms of view as well, it's actually really, really good in terms of its open cockpitness, which is a bit ironic considering that this is a MISC ship, which normally has the worst kind of cockpit designs in Star Citizen, in my opinion, which is a fun experience to try and explain to other people. I'll be with you in a moment, Mirai. So, going over to, speaking on older designs and other elements towards it, let's talk about the Freelancer series. More specifically, the Freelancer MISC, which is the missile boat / combat variant of the Freelancer series. So, the Freelancer MISC is a pretty solid design. It's got some pretty... as I said, it's a missile boat, so its main strength is the things that spew out and do death. Because it has quite the ammo capacity. 28 size 3 missiles, to be exact, which is pretty cool. As you can see, it has 20 internally loaded and 8 exteriorly loaded missiles, which I think are pretty cool. It sacrifices a bit of the cargo space, but you can see some of the cool things in here. If you go into this little section as well, you can see where all the missiles are kept, which then get fed up into the internal systems like so. So, in terms of a solo pilot's capacity, they finally fucking fixed the mechanics of the MISC Freelancer series, which I'm honestly ecstatic about. Like, for fucking years, I hated this line of ships because you couldn't drive anything inside this cargo bay because of the prongs sticking out. Finally, someone noticed this and decided to say, hey, let's raise them up whilst you're doing it. So now I can actually say one of the big problems with the MISC Freelancer series has been resolved. So thank you, CIG, for working on that. I do very much appreciate the effort and time you've put into that, which is really nice. I wish the stability of I wish it wouldn't be so laggy at points with Star Citizen, but again, don't have a NASA level computer. I'm not Morphologist or anyone who has that computer stuff, so unfortunately my system is going to have to lag out for a couple of seconds whilst it catches up. It's annoying, but unfortunately, it's how it is, sadly. But going further afield into the ship, we kind of have the same old deployment systems. There's the toilet, there's the glasses for the toilet, there is the beds, which, again, it's more a multi-crew elements. And here is one of the main reasons why I don't like MISC ship internal cockpits. Can you see how bad this is? Like, this is an intentional design of MISC ships. And I appreciate that MISC is trying to keep in touch with its Xi'an counterparts by doing all of this fancy pants stuff. But Jesus Christ, on a bike, I cannot see... I need a pair of binoculars to see outside of this cockpit. It is really bad. Like, it's noticeably irritatingly bad. And even with the FOV, it's actually kind of worse with the FOV system that I've got at the moment. But even with the FOV now allowing me to see further afield with that, you still have to get a pair of binoculars. Even if it was right back at the original case, you'd still need to get binoculars to be able to see where the fuck you're going at that one, which is annoying as all hell. And it's one of the main reasons why I'm not such a huge fan of the MISC series of ships, because it just does this. And it thinks it's good when it's not. But we then get ships like the Reliant and the Prospector, which have the best internal cargo cockpit systems I've seen in a ship in terms of visibility. And it just, oh my god, so frustrating. So frustrating. Anyway, moving on to the last ship, or the last big ship in the room, we of course need to talk about the Starfarer, or the Starfarer Gemini, which is... Oh, suddenly the music's gotten very intense and very serious. Ooh. the game is getting intense. It's getting dramatic. We are looking at the big ship. No, so the Starfarer series of ships is a really cool concept of a ship because this is a dedicated refueling vessel. So, and the gameplay loop for this has been in the game now for a few years, and it's looking pretty cool as a result. Let me just hit this whole little button over here. There we go. So this is CIG's first attempt at a large vessel construction. If I'm not mistaken, this was in fact the largest ship in the game for the first... Oh, it's glitched. Well, fuck a duck. We guess we're not going inside it. But we'll try and see if this version has the ability for us to at least look inside of it. Whilst we're here. Great job, CIG. No, it's the showroom editions. These versions of the ships are always a little buggy because they are the showroom editions of the ships versus the actual renting. So if you want a good, honest opinion about some of the ships, it's better to rent them and take them to a location and explore them, experiment with them, rather than talk about them. But because of time constraints, I'm only going to be able to talk about this in a limited form. So the thing with this particular ship, apart from its very practical usage of the fuel system nowadays, this particular ship was their first attempt at making a big ship. And you can tell because when you go inside the ship, we can see from limited views here in terms of corridor. You can see there's a fair amount of corridors and doors and everything else leading outside. And there's all these little nooks and crannies. There's no guided system like you would receive in future editions of vessels in Star Citizen. So, for example, ships that would follow along in this thing, which is the Reclaimer, there's a lot more of a flow through, even if it's still a bit maze-like, there's more of a flow through, which allows the player to know where they need to go and be able to navigate to it. The bridge is also a case of bad design logics, because, for example, there is the big bridge at the front, and then there's the captain's captain's seat, which is cool. It's very cool. But it is also difficult to fly around with. It's a big multi-crew ship, and come Pyro, it will prove to be quite the useful vessel, because there's not going to be many outposts in Pyro, and considering the fact that Pyro is an abandoned sector, technically speaking, we may see a large amount of players utilizing this as a means of monetary earnings, as well as being able to fuel, as well as being able to be the lifeblood of any vessel inside the Pyro system. It may or may not have dedicated outposts, but in comparison to the Stanton system, it will be a lot harder to refuel your ship. So what makes this vessel a military vessel? Well, literally the missiles at the front. I'm not joking. It's more or less the missiles at the front. In terms of weapons and armament, it has more powerful engines, stronger versions of the 3-man turrets. It also has an optional missile pod. That's the main thing. 9 size 3 arrestor missiles, but components, slightly better turrets, that's about it. It's a fueling ship. It's not designed for combat, but there you go. It's more or less what you need from this particular thing. I mean, the turrets are pretty cool. You've got some pretty effective... I'm looking at their mans and I'm seeing the size of them. I'm thinking size 5s. So size 5s to 6s, there's pretty impressive size there. So they will be something that could slap someone if they try to fuck with you. But again, it's not really a combat ship. It's something you would escort, definitely, but it's not a dedicated combat ship. So again, CIG's first attempt at a big ship, and despite its flaws, I think it still does pretty damn good, but obviously it's something that you will need to take into account when deciding to do what kind of fulfill a logistics role, is that this ship is currently the only refueling ship at the moment. And if you're willing to compete on that, congratulations, you've got a lot of money-making potential, but at the same time, you are also running in one of the worst, largest ships in the game right now, in terms of, maze-like qualities to it, so hey-ho. But in an unexpected twist for the Invictus launch week, we have dedicated civilian aircraft in the form of the Mirai Razor and the new, and this is the first time I've seen them in-game, Mirai Pulse. Now this is the combat version of the ship, or hoverbike is the more correct term, and it's a very tiny little hoverbike. As you can see, it's very nifty. It's basically what I'm going to call the Yamaha, but this particular edition is the latest and greatest in terms of internal cargo capacity, or internal component capacity and holdings and everything else. You can see all of these really cool little features here. It also has a size 1 laser repeater at the front. So if you're into the combat side of things, you can do so. And it's got these really cool kind of features here. So it looks really cool. I'm not going to lie. I am suitably impressed with this variant of the vehicle. And I think it's only going to show the military version of this, isn't it? Yes, it is. So again, I think it looks pretty cool. I have bought the non-military edition, which is the LX, because this one is just the Pulse, and this one, yeah, oh, there's the Stealth. Really? Stealth? No, it's not. It's a racing vessel. I can't look at this in any other way except racing vessel. We'll get to that in a second. But no, the Pulse skimmer bike is really cool, actually. Kind of reminds me of a Yamaha or a Honda back in like the 80s with the deco and everything. It looks very nice, and obviously in terms of racing, it's going to be the go-to for many racers in Star Citizen. I think we're going to see a lot more of these things being utilized in racing in the future. Undoubtedly for the Daymar Rally, but in other unique elements as well. So I am looking... Oh, hello, game lag. I am definitely looking at these with a curiosity in my mind, because I do like the vehicles. I don't know if I'll ever be a racer, but I definitely feel like this is something I'd like to look into a little bit more. Who knows? So, going on to the last vehicle in the room, this is the Razor EX. It's basically a, figure quote, stealth version of the Razor series. The Razor series is a small, snub-like fighter. Ah, Nimbus has joined. Wonderful. It is a small snub-like fighter which has the capacity to do quite a fair amount, and also can get you in and out of the hotspot if you're wanting to get into a location with a little bit more subtlety, or if you just want to relive the days of Wipeout 2097, you can indeed enjoy that with this thing. I personally do not think of this much as a vessel because it feels more like a racing craft, and you often do see these in racing events. So I think, personally speaking, as a vessel goes, it's not bad. It looks really cool, and definitely is much better suited for racing, but there are combat capabilities within these vessels, and if you're a fan of this design and likeness, definitely go for it. I just can't imagine this thing as anything more than a glorified racing vehicle or hard-flying or low-flying show-off vehicle. But yeah, it's still very cool. Don't get me wrong, it's extremely cool looking. I just can't imagine this as a combat ship. It's a racing vessel, and feel free to fight me on that one. I in any of the ships, by the way, I encourage everyone to talk about. I would love to start a discussion, actually, because because again, this is not just about this. My opinions on these video series. This is I want to start discussions on these. I want to talk about these ships because I love talking about ships in Star Citizen. It's my favorite thing to do. So, on to the last stage. So, as we enter into the basement, we are presented with a large host of ground vehicles, which, Tumbril being the king of ground vehicles, it's not really a surprise. So, without further ado, let's get cracking with the smaller ones. And of course, you know them, you love them, it's the Cyclones. Now, for many of you players out there, you may be more familiar with the racing variant, the Cyclone RT, which is the rocket-propelled version, which apparently no longer is rocket-propelled, which now makes it just the Cyclone vehicle. And if you're a fan of Halo, you'll no doubt be seeing this thing, which is of course the Cyclone TR, because the Cyclone TR is basically the Warthog. It looks like the Warthog, it feels like the Warthog. It doesn't drive like the Warthog though. It's got much more grip and a lot faster. So if you're driving around like a madman, there is a good chance you will smash into something, probably buggering the vehicle in the process. So do take care. The other vehicles around it are more variations of the combat vessel. This one is the Cyclone RN, which is basically a reconnaissance vehicle. It replaces its turret with a giant spherical device, or radar dish is what everyone else calls it. I know technology. But it basically replaces it with a giant scanning device, which allows you to get high-definition imagery for your satellite imagery up there. You then have the Cyclone AA, which is, as it says on the tin, an anti-air variant, giving you not only a size 2 missiles, but an EMP field as well. Very, very tasty. Then you've got the Cyclone MT, which is literally anger personified in a ground vehicle. Unlike the Cyclone TR, which is the Warthog, effectively, this thing has 4 size 2 missiles and a size 1 autocannon at the top. I don't know why they released it. When it first came out, we thought it was an April Fool's joke. It wasn't. And it just personifies how much of a bad day the Cyclone series can have and then take out on other people. I don't want to piss off the driver of one of these things if I can help it. So the other thing, of course, in the room is the Nova Tonk. And I actually am saying that correctly in the eyes of certain French developers, because the Nova Tonk is, well, basically the first ever tank implemented in Star Citizen, with the construction of this particular vessel, well, the design of this particular vessel being a 3-person crew vehicle with a gunner, commander, and a driver. Though, interesting thing to note, if we hop into the driver's seat very quickly, is the Tumbrel, or the Nova Tonk, has a remote turret onto it, which allows the driver to use the main gun of the vehicle and still drive around, making it quite the useful combat vehicle, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, lag out once again. I don't know what it is with the latest patch, but it has been extremely laggy at points. And, well, I say laggy, spikes, though I think it's more of an issue that CIG are aware of and they are trying to fix. And unfortunately, it just means that when I'm trying to do my thing inside Star Citizen, it's making the recording software go on haywire, because I've had to record multiple times various bits. No thanks to the fucking stutters. So hopefully that's going to be fixed relatively soon, and we can get on with the more recording side of things. Anyway, on to the last vehicle. This is the most recent addition to the Storm, the Tumbrel series, the Storm. This is a really cool, lighter armored vehicle. It's designed primarily as a reconnaissance / minor skirmisher vessel. As you can see, the weapon on the top is a more minor vessel. It's more of it's actually an autocannon. And we're going to be quick with this one because I don't want the game to lag out and crash the recording software again. So, and we're back, just taking care to cut up the sections of the recording just to make sure that we actually get the bloody recording software working as giant lag spike. God, it's getting bad. Anyway, so the Tumbrel Storm, the latest addition to the Tumbrel series, and in my opinion, one of the nicest looking vehicles in the ground army, as it has a really cool array of stuff that you can sort of showcase. So, for example, if I press and hold the driver's seat option, we'll deploy the weapon rack, because this thing has its own dedicated weapon rack system, which is really cool. So I'll retract the weapon rack and hop in the driver's seat. So the Tumbrel Storm has this really cool display. Oh, God. Here we go. So, as you can see here, this vehicle has quite a fairly decent internal carrying, quite a decent view-ish, but the main reason for the view is going to be through the remote turret. Because, again, taking advantage of what the Nova Tonk did, the Storm primarily will be utilized by, as now it's primarily utilized by one driver, will have the ability to unleash absolute hell with its weapon before skedaddling out of the field, which is honestly quite terrifying when you realize just what kind of damage this thing could do in a minor skirmish. So moving on to the Tumbrel Storm AA, this thing is literally steroid levels of terror in terms of of anti-air, because unlike other ships, which has, for example, unlike other AA versions, like for example the Tumbrel, the Cyclone AA having like a few couple of size 2s, this thing has many missiles. This thing has 16 size 2 Ignite 2 missiles and 64 Marksman size 1 missiles. Jesus Christ. That is mental. But it's really cool, because I can imagine being in a combat zone and this thing saying "Hello" towards any vessel that decides to fly into that combat zone. I don't want to be responsible for the amounts of pants shitting that certain pilots may involuntarily commit when they see that thing targeting them with the spam of missiles. But to be fair, there are other higher levels of competitors towards anti-air missile ground technology, such as the ballista, but we won't see those until Anvil Day, so that's besides the point. Anyway, going on into the last section of the room, we are going to head straight to the big boy, which is, of course, the big boy, kind of. This is the Tumbril Ranger. This has been in development for a very, very long time. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, my first Invictus launch week was in fact the first time we saw this, or it might have been IAE. I can't remember. But what I can remember is that this bloody thing was on the holographic displays all the way back in 2020 or 2019. I'm thinking 2019. And it's been in development for so bloody long, it's taking the piss. Now, obviously, CIG have prioritized more important things, and as obviously with 323 being a beautiful example of good implementation, I'm not angry. Like, I'm not thinking, oh, fucking goddammit, CIG. But it's one of those vehicles that I've wanted for a while, because for so long we've had skimmer technology when it comes to bikes, and I kind of wanted to have a ground-based bike vehicle. But obviously there are other things as a factor, which, I mean, the main reason why it's difficult to do this is because with a skimmer bike, it skims, you don't have to worry about it. With a Ranger, like a traditional bike, you have to implement physics, which allows you to actually mean you have to be careful when standing still on a bike, because if a bike stands still, it falls over. Well, obviously, that might not be the case with the Ranger. It might do some weird, funky things with the physics, which is why it is the way it is. But still, I've been wanting to see this thing in for a while, and I'm certainly wanting to see, and I'm excited to see this thing if it ever decides to get into launch. But at this point, it's been in development for so long, I'm wondering if it's just on the back burner, and eventually when they do have the ability to release it, it will come out. But I will say this, the hype for this has come and gone, and probably won't come back, even if it gets released. So what's the next vehicle? Oh, it's just the other variants of the Cyclone Ranger. So this is the TR, which is the combat variant of the ship, which is more dedicated shooty shoot. And it does have some pretty fucking stonker weaponry on it. I mean, 2 size 1 autocannons on a fucking motorbike. That is cool. It's cool. It's a really cool concept for a motorbike. I just don't personally see the appeal in it anymore because, well, there have been other shit. Oh, it's just literally the same thing. Okay. So it's literally this, it's been in development for so long that it's really hard to get hype for something like that when you've not seen any real sign of it since the announcement of the concept art. So anyway, that's my own personal feelings on the subject when it comes to such things as the Tumbril. But sadly, that is also the end of today, which hopefully this video is not super long. Knowing me, it's probably still close to being an hour long, but that's fair, or well, that's how things go whenever I try and record these things. But I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I do also ask you to discuss, to talk, to engage, because this is what I love about Star Citizen. Is not about just looking and talking about what I like, but hearing what other people have to say about their favorite ships. What makes the Mirai a really good series? What makes the Crusader a really good series? Or any of the other vessels that we see in Invictus Launch Week and beyond. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you have enjoyed today's session. I hope to see you all in the next episode, whereupon we'll be seeing the Aegis Day, yeah boy, and beyond as well. So, I will see you then. This is Mr. Jaeger signing out. Have a good one, guys.